I want to live to be 100, literally. I want to live to be 100 years old. And the only way to do that is to, keep this machine tight every day, keep this body, the mind sharp every day, keep the spirit full, and keep this community strong. Other than that, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to wither up and fall over and age and die. Because that's what the human process is. But for me, because I started with the body, I think the body is the most important. Because I started here, and it made me so strong and vibrant and able. I was able to confront my fear. I was able to try something silly. I was able to, open my heart more because I was strong. When I didn't feel strong, that was just not good. So that investment for me is the most important, and for everybody should be the most important. If you want to live a good life, that's the number one investment.
Well, hello and welcome to the Show Your Value podcast, where we talk about the art of value creation in three macro buckets: material value, emotional energy value, and spiritual value. I'm your host, Lee Benson, and today I have a very special guest with me, Frank Shamrock. Frank Shamrock was a former professional mixed martial artist and a pioneer of the sport. He was the first to hold the UFC middleweight championship and retired a four-time defending undefeated champion, ranked number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He was named Fighter of the Decade for the 1990s by Wrestling Observer, Best Full Contact Fighter by Black Belt Magazine in 1998, and three-time Fighter of the Year by Full Contact Fighter Magazine. Frank spent much of his young life in foster care, often enduring abuse and neglect, until he was officially adopted and mentored by his father figure, Bob Shamrock, at the age of 21. In 2011, after 16 years of professional combat, Frank retired and turned his efforts promoting his startup, Strikeforce, the hottest MMA brand on the rise at the time. Within a few years, the UFC acquired Strikeforce for a whopping $34 million. Congratulations. Beyond his success as a UFC champion and entrepreneur, Frank is now an active coach, mental health activist, and motivational speaker. His charity, Shamrock Way, was set up by his late father, Bob, provides women's empowerment programs, youth incarceration outreach, and veteran art programs. Frank and his team are willing to do whatever it takes to have a positive impact on this planet. Frank, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's quite the bio, I gotta
say. Well, your team's great. They were complete. I could say so much more in there. And actually, so I taught Taekwondo for a number of years, so I understand this whole martial arts culture piece of it. I had a full-time school in Scottsdale, Arizona for about 4 years, and then I taught out of my home. I built a dojang for about 14 years before I was too busy running all my businesses to keep it going. One of the things that really stuck out as I was doing my research around you, and of course, everybody knows who you are, and in the 90s, just watching your fights, it was incredible. I wrote a book recently titled Value Creation Kid, The Healthy Struggles Your Children Need to Succeed. You struggled a lot as a youth, and you leveraged it to be wildly successful on the material side, but I would say also on the emotional energy side and how you elevated that, and the spiritual connected side. Talk about your struggle a bit and how you leveraged it. I mean, what was the real benefit, and how do you see that?
Sure. Well, I mean, for me, especially I'm 50 years old, so I'm getting older and I have more time to reflect. But when I was a martial arts instructor, I wasn't a martial artist. I was a survivor. I was a fighter. I was just there trying to figure it all out. And then I realized I should teach because that's a better way of learning knowledge and sharing and bringing people together. And then people are also interested in what I was teaching. It was important information to some people. But what's always fascinating to me is I've never walked into a martial arts school with the desire or feeling like, I'm missing something. I should go find it. And I think it exists here. And so I came in the opposite way. I was a fighter. I needed it. I had information. I just started teaching. But that connection with people and that spiritual connection with another being who's on a similar journey, or who's, maybe has fear or something, or, just joining together and overcoming something. That's been the greatest impact of my whole life, for everything I've done. And we use the same principles in business, and then, our nonprofit work and our social work. It's always the same principles as martial arts. But it wasn't always that way. I mean, I grew up, just a really traumatized child. And I didn't know I was traumatized. And I didn't know until I got into the system. I was, and I accidentally got there. I threw rocks at a train when I was 11 years old. And it's a felony in the state of California, because apparently rocks hit conductors and they die. And so it's a problem. I didn't know. We didn't have money to defend. And so I got sent to juvenile hall for 10 days. And it was the very first time I left my home. And I realized that where I was living was really bad, and the things that were happening to me were probably the reason why I was acting and reacting and having the social problems that I was having at the time. But I still have the strength from those days, is what I also realize as I run into people in a more mature state of my life. Getting locked in a closet made me really tough, and it made me very mentally, focused on things I wanted and things I dreamed. And then I've seen the flip side, where the human brain breaks and it's too much, and they split and they do this and that. And I'm blessed that martial arts and the physicalness and the human interaction, I think, saved me from that, to be truthful, because the stress, as you get older, people over 35 now are starting to go, I feel really stressed and pains and all these aches, and why does my spine hurt? And a lot of that's just the stuff that you've been carrying around. And that's when it started releasing for me. Luckily, I was able to retire with my career and become very successful. When I got the chance to look at myself and work on myself. Most of us don't until we get near the, near the end, the proverbial end. And then it's really hard. It's hard for a 50-year-old man to sit down and deal with his emotions.
Well, and by my standards, you're young, so I'm about 11 years older than you, so I'm kind of cranking through life.
Yeah, you're the next phase. My friends are all 60 and 65, and they're doing the next thing. They're like, man, it's really hard, and I gotta deal with some of this stuff. And it's like, we got to do it.
Yeah, I was listening to one of your interviews, and I thought it was really interesting what you said. When you do good things that are hard, the hard leaves, but the good stays. When you do bad things, the pleasure leaves, but the bad stays. And kind of going with that, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes choices that they wish they wouldn't have made, throughout their lives. What have you learned about letting go of that bad so it doesn't stay forever? Because I know some people, they keep beating themselves up and holding on to it. And at some point you have to move on. What have you learned about being able to move on that you can share with our listeners?
It's a process, and it's real work. It's hard work. And, you got to identify it and really dig into it. I didn't know how messed up I was until, because then I had to go fight, and I was still messed up. And then I was trying to work through that. And then, I had all kinds of social dysfunctions. And it wasn't until I had that moment, when I was retired, and I was like, okay, wow, I feel really weird. And, I feel really emotional. Like, what do I do about this? But, first thing is, I wrote it down, and I got up and addressed it. And part of that was talking about it. Part of it was sharing and realizing other people had the experience. Other people were feeling like I was feeling. So it made me feel less, less reactive or emotional about it. And then it's all counteraction. I feel weird about this. Well, all right. I feel like I might be rejected. So I just go up and, I might get rejected, but let's try, let's get in there and see. But for me, it's all counteractions. I got to take a moment, kind of breathe and go, all right, was this it? And I take a counteraction if I think it's something I need to, work on inside of here.
Okay. And, so many of the most successful people that I know had really challenging childhoods, like really challenging struggle. I think there's a lot of healthy struggles that we call trauma today that are definitely not trauma. It's just normal, healthy struggles that kids go through to become successful adults. and there's unhealthy struggle. But some of the most successful people have had really unhealthy struggles in their childhood, and yet they leveraged it to be incredible, which is what you've done. And I've seen them, like you said, go the other way as well. So what is that difference? I mean, I've got my story and what I went through and what kept me going, outside of a very toxic and sometimes dangerous home environment. But what made you stay that path? Was it the martial arts? I mean, what gave you that drive? You didn't go down the dark path and stay there.
Well, I did. I mean, I did when I was younger until I was in prison. My first day of martial arts training was one day after I got out of Folsom Prison, because I went all the way to the end, even though I had all this advice and mentorship and support. I had such emotional angst and issues that, I wrote it to the end until I had plenty of time to think about what was wrong and and how I should fix myself, or what I thought, could fix me. But it was really having a mentor. There was having Bob Shamrock, be like, hey, he told me the whole time, hey, you can't do this. That's you're going to get in trouble. Hey, that's, this will be the consequence if you do this. And just to have someone there that I trusted, that I loved, who cared for me, to give me, sound advice that I didn't listen to until I messed it all up. That's the most important thing, just having an ear and having trust. But for that, it took me to share. I had to share myself. He had to be vulnerable and share himself so we could develop a bond. And then even in the darkest times, I was like, this man loves me and cares for me. So maybe this time I'll listen. And then, because it's all I had. There was nothing left for me after fighting. I have 23 felony convictions. I've never had a job. I can't get a job. I can't own a firearm. I can't do anything like that because I'm totally outside of society. And I realized that once I got educated and I went to college and prison, and I was like, my brain woke up. I realized there was nothing. It's fight or live on the streets and be a convict. And so, so I was willing to do anything. And I think that's where the human spirit comes in and attracts things. Talk about doing good things. When I do good things, all this stuff comes to me, and people want to help, and people want to get involved, and we change people. Like, it's just wonderful. And then when I go over here and I do just bad things, it's just bad people come around and bad people get involved, and then the deal doesn't work. And it took me a long time to just get that feeling of people, and then to really hear what they're saying and read between the lines, and, go with my gut and lead with my heart. And that's the process. You just every day, mind, body, spirit. All right, I got an issue over here. Let's go. I'm taking the stage tonight for a keynote on fear. And the comedy is, I'm terrified of public speaking. I truly am. I have been since I was a child. It was one of my biggest fears. And I just book them once a month because I go, all right, well, what's the need in the audience? Okay. What's the need up here? All right, well, let's go do some work. And it's amazing because it's real. Like, it's real, and they're experiencing it real. We're all going through the thing, and it's super powerful. But people, don't normally, step towards their fears and go, hey guys, I'm a little scared of the dark over here. People just don't do that anymore, especially.
Over time, because I started pretty early, so my very short journey and what kind of got me out of what was an unhealthy environment around the home and a lot of my friends when I was very young. At 6 years old, a neighbor says, hey, will you pull weeds for 25 cents an hour? I was like, sure. And it wasn't a friend, wasn't a family member. I love what that felt like, because back then you could buy 2 candy bars and have change. It was great. And then it was, shoveling snow and mowing lawns and paper routes. And by the time I was kicked out of the house, beginning of my senior year in high school, it was a non-event to get my own apartment. I was financially independent. That whole value creation world, exchanging my best efforts for the best efforts of others, I could trust it and build on it. That totally saved me and got me going. And you struggled longer than I did, but you still leveraged all that to create incredible material value in terms of selling your business, the businesses that you have today, and all the people that you're helping. And you've really shifted into giving back in so many ways, to those that really need it. How long have you been doing this this work? Like, what was that point where you said, "Oh my gosh, this is where I feel the best"? Was that 15 years ago, 20 years ago? What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, it was in 1997. 1990s, because I won my first US title. I was a champion in Japan. I came over here and I was like, this sport's going to make it. It's like, we got issues, but this sport's going to make it. So I was really vested in the success. And I think that commitment, like I was going to do anything humanly possible to win. Yeah. But it goes back to being a child. Like I knew, I was like, we got to figure out a way to survive because this is not sustainable. I'd go out in public and it would be a mess, problems, social problems, interactions. I'm like, something's really wrong. And once I found out what it was, it's like, wow, we got to shift this. And, you can't give an 11-year-old the power to control crime and home placement because that's a train wreck. But, I knew like, this feels better. Hey, these people are good in this way. And, these people are going to protect me. And, I just think that having a flexibility in the mind and then having a strong spirit and being like, can't get locked in a closet, like, can't have bad things happen. And then meeting the martial arts people, meeting the community who's like, hey, yeah, guys, like we go home and we also do other stuff. I'm like, oh, what do we do over there? Like, that sounds amazing. And so that world has just brought me in and then taught me how to be a real good human. Bob Shamrock taught me how to be a real good man. And that's when this work started. As soon as I spoke in the juvenile halls is where I started. 1997, I won the US championship and I was like, it's going to happen. And I got to be the voice. I'm terrified of speaking. So it was on my list of human development things that I knew I needed to achieve. And so I said, who's my people? Where do I go? Where do I feel most comfortable? And where will I have the most amount of impact? And I went, thought about it. And I went, I remember sitting on that hard plastic chair in juvenile hall right at the beginning. And these guys coming through and they were all, nerdy doctors. And they were talking about human brain development and all this new science. It was, we're finding out kids do get traumatized. They're like, just stuff that made no sense to us. So we were just kids. And so, as soon as they came in, we just passed notes and we hung out and nobody touched my heart. Not one of those people, hundreds of them came through. And I thought, that's where I need to be. And so that's where I started. I rolled in juvenile hall. I told my story, brought my belt, and it was powerful. If you raised your hands, we would take, if you raised your hands, we'd start a correspondence. Once you got out, we would pay for your martial arts training, wherever it was, wherever you ended up, whatever you were doing. Then you just had to have your shit together and, check in with your mentor. And just like me, these boys developed into men and, leaders. We had guys go to West Point. Like, it was so powerful to see. And I was still doing my career. So it was like a side hustle. I was like, all right, things are going up here. I got to keep getting better. And it's like, let's speak more at more juvenile halls. And so it was kind of the symbiotic, relationship. And then eventually I left. I went to the jails and, all the way to, Google and, Spanx and whatever. And I've spoken all over now, but it was really needing to face that fear.
Yeah. Well, two things. I love that you're doing this. This is so great that you're giving back in this way. And I think about holistic value creation. So money is where most people go. It's like, wait a minute, you have emotional energy value, which I think is the scarcest commodity on the planet. And you have spiritual value, and emotional energy and spiritual are by far collectively more important than the financial or material piece of it. And so when I hear you talking about speaking to groups, either one-on-one, large groups, doesn't matter, and they go on to do, better things because of that, you've elevated their emotional energy and their belief in themselves that they can actually do something. And what better expert to talk about that than somebody that has probably second to none the drive to be the best and win. I mean, it's just incredible to go back and watch some of your fights in preparing for this. This holistic value creation, I think people miss it. They go right to money. And I keep saying, no, it's how do you feel, and how connected are you with something bigger, community, whatever that is for you. Talk about that a little bit. People miss it. Even in one of your interviews, you were talking about, I was successful on the money side, but you just kept digging into, I wanted to be the best. I studied this. I went this way. I went that way. That's what really got me, and it elevated me emotionally just listening to it. It's like, oh my gosh, I could do even more. So talk about that a little bit and what you think there.
But first of all, it's not about the money. It's not about the money. I came from zero, made a ton of money. It didn't change. Everything was the same. It's really not about the journey, but it is about the length and joy, the length and joy of the entire journey. Like that. It's not about the money. It's about the journey, the whole thing. And that's what everyone misses, because I want to live to be 100, literally. I want to live to be 100 years old. And the only way to do that is to, keep this machine tight every day, keep this body, the mind sharp every day, keep the spirit full, and keep this community strong. Other than that, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to wither up and fall over and age and die, because that's what the human process is. But for me, because I started with the body, I think the body is the most important, because I started here, and it made me so strong and vibrant and able. I was able to confront my fear. I was able to try something silly. I was able to, open my heart more, because I was strong. When I didn't feel strong, that was just not good. So that investment for me is the most important, and for everybody should be the most important. If you want to live a good life, that's the number one investment, equally to the mind and the spirit. But I start my day with exercise and care to the machine, because I want to have the best journey that is possible. It doesn't matter how much money you have. I have a friend, $1 billion, lives dying of heart disease. He's of a man-made illness because he worked himself to death. So his journey is not the best journey. It's going to be shortened, because he didn't take care of the mechanics for the best journey. It's not about the money. It's not about the prettiest girl. Trust me, I did it all. It's not about being a champion. It's not about being a movie star. It's not about being a model. It's not about being a broadcaster. It's about being a good human and having a good experience and a good journey. And at the end, we all end up, old around people we love, we hope, and we make an exit. And we either do it gloriously or we fall off and it just ends. And so I think it could be full of love. I think it could be full of joy, especially if this machine will go as long as it'll go, as far as it'll go, as well as it'll go, while I keep learning and doing and spreading and sharing and impacting. So when I do fall over, they're all around me going, man, nice journey, buddy. And that's the only hope, that you can hope for, I think, once you reach the halfway point. You're like, all right, well, halfway. What's the best scenario?
Yeah, I jokingly say now that I'm 62, I'm about a third of the way through my life, so I should figure out what I want to do.
Yeah, now's the time to get serious. You're like, well, I've got... And my mentor dad is 80. He's 80. So he's rode that machine like like an old Harley the whole time. And so, he's just fallen off health-wise, but he's having the moment. He's like, oh man, and the regrets and and I'm seeing the cycle of all my mentors and all my business, mentors, and, they're 65, they're 70, and they're just falling over. And I'm like, thank goodness. Bob Shamrock said, starts here, starts in the machine. You build the machine, then all the blood starts moving around, and then you go to the rest of it. And his belief in bodybuilding and just understanding your human machine and how it works, how to feed it, how to care for it with sleep, eat, stretch, muscle, like all that stuff. That's been the most valuable information in my entire life. That's the value I put in myself. And with that, I was able to do all these other things. So we talk about value creation, start here every day. It takes 5 minutes, 7 minutes, it takes nothing. And just enjoy it. Enjoy looking. I got to look at my spine every day because it's broken. So I got to stand there buck naked and go, we're kind of looking crooked today. That I got to go do exercises to get it straight so I can go about my day. Because if I don't by midday, I'm a little crooked. I got a spasm. I got these things. That's been happening to me for 20 plus years. And I manage it and I keep rolling and it keeps moving forward. But, that to a 70-year-old person, they're done. You can't recover. One fall, one massive spasm, and you just can't recover. So you got to just keep that machine going long as possible, as well as possible, for the best journey possible. It's just that should be the game. And the money and all the other stuff is accoutrements.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Our physical health is kind of the foundation for building everything else. And, I actually agree with the statement that 100% on diet, for example, is easier than 99%. If you cheat a little bit, it's easy to go off. I've had some health issues, so 100% is my only choice, or I can end up in the hospital with some autoimmune stuff. But for most people, the easiest thing, the least expensive thing they could do for their health would be to eat right and recover right, and probably take their brains to the gym every day too, read a book, get involved, be on the front lines creating value somewhere. Why is it so hard, do you think, for most people to eat and move and recover correctly when it's the cheapest thing they could do, but they won't do it? Obviously, you must have been incredibly disciplined with what you did, but
and I still am.
What's your advice there?
I don't need desserts because they're wonderful, but they're just a massive blast of extra calories after my meal has kind of gone in my belly. So I'm just like, no. I mean, maybe another time I'll eat a small dessert for a piece of flavor, but to me, it's like that makes no sense. I'm gonna drop all the sugar on top. It seems off in this machine. And so if I were a Ferrari, I wouldn't come in and put the cheap gas in with a little additive and a little cleaner. I would just get the best gas possible so I could floor it. And that's how I started thinking about my machine. And then I started getting this knowledge in prison where the fuel is terrible. I mean, prison food is horrible. So the only solution was to work in the kitchen. Get up early, go work in the kitchen, steal food, steal eggs, steal proteins, the best proteins possible. And that's what we used to do when we were running around gathering and, when food wasn't so easily accessible. But we should be searching for the best foods. We should be searching for the best rest, the best ways to care for our machine. And somewhere in our society, we just, move the machine out of importance, and that's just, I think, the wrong concept, because then the machines are failing all at the same time from all the same diseases that all are caused by the exact same inactivities. If you just stretched, went for a walk, talked to a friend, and did something good every day while you ate a good, healthy meal, you would live forever. You would live 120 years. You would literally live forever, as long as the human machine will go. And then I just am fascinated with longevity, because if you're born now after, in the 90s, you have a full-on chance of living to be 100 without problem, because technology is going so far. So if we could just do a little more effort on these machines for that wonderful journey, that technology is going to catch up. And I'm waiting for the nanobots to come in and fix my spondy spine, because, it's 50% spinal surgery. So I got a 50% chance of being in more pain, having more issues, or it could end. So I'm like, 50%, that's in fighting. That's the worst percentage ever. You're like, half the time you're going to get knocked out. The other half you're going to win. I'm like, nope, that's not a percentage you want to bring into a gunfight. All right, you or me. That's just terrible. And in good martial arts, as you know, the highest percentage, do the most amount of damage with the least amount of effort and the least amount of damage done to yourself. So that 50% is just unacceptable. So as soon as the nanobots come, I'll be fine.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. If I only get to move in my gym an hour and a half a day, that's a light day for me to start. I like to be in there at least 2.5, 3 hours.
Nice. Yeah.
and nothing big. I just want to keep moving. It's all about functional movement for me. I want to feel good. I want to go on long hikes and do all of that. But I also found it's incredibly important to take my brain to the gym every day. So the work I do, I work with lots of companies from startups to 60 plus $1 billion market caps. And it's fun being in the room with senior leaders. Yes, I'm a consultant and I'm helping them create value faster, but I'm also an equal brain in the room to help them create value faster. That's been the ticket for me. And I have a lot of friends that just sort of decline starting around 50. And I don't think it's because it naturally happens. I think it's because they stopped going to the gym. The same thing would happen to your muscles if you stopped working out, right? So yeah, this whole concept of physically moving and eating right and recovering right, getting a lot of sleep, it's the brain. How do we all take our brains to the gym every day? And doing all of this probably helps a ton with, mental illness issues as well, if you can get a handle on that foundation. So, if you can talk about that work, I was really kind of surprised. I mean, I've seen this stuff before, but on your website, the Shamrock Way, talking about 1 in 5 people will suffer from mental illness at some point in their lives, and 3 out of 4 that do suffer from severe mental illness don't get any help with that. And so some of these foundational things can improve, but please talk about that work and where you're seeing it move the needle.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and on that last number, the 3 out of 5 are people experiencing it. People that do experiencing it takes an average of 10 years to get treatment. So for 10 years, it's just, they're having social issues, so many things, and many of them come in, just worn out and health issues and, all kinds of different social problems. But it started for me when my brother was homeless and we didn't understand why. Like, we just couldn't figure it out. And so we're like, this makes no sense. He's smart. He's able-bodied. And, but he grew up as well in a very tough childhood with us. And he got hurt in the Navy, lost a finger. And so after that, the Navy was kind of his thing. It was like his, it was his purpose. And after it was gone, he just fell off the wheels, became homeless. And we spent years trying to find him and then bringing him back. And in the process, we would get involved with his medications. And we figured out, like, oh man, he's taking all these crazy medications for bipolar disorder, like severe bipolar disorder. And so we were like, whoa, what is this? And so, try to fill the brain, try to help my brother. I, researched as much as I possibly could. And then about the same time, I learned Mauro Ranallo. My broadcast partner was bipolar. And I'm like, whoa, I should figure it out for this guy too, because it might be of value. And so I figured out as much as I could. I got my brother off the streets. He eventually went back and then eventually took his own life. And so it had such a profound effect on me and my life, because I finally survived and made it. Like, I finally made it and was like, oh, now I want to work on myself and help my family and friends. And then, my brother passed away, and it just was really hard. But I was able to help my buddy Mauro. And then I was like, this information was in my head. I was like, well, it has no value. My brother's passed, but why can't we use it? Use it to help Mauro. And then once I saw the result of that, I was like, well, let's make a movie out of it and let's show people, because I think this will be really valuable, because people don't understand. I didn't understand. Our family didn't. We just didn't understand. We're like, what do you mean? He's like, listen, I got to sleep. I got to sleep right now. I took my pills. And we just didn't understand. His brain worked differently. It had to be turned off, had to be turned on, in order for him to survive. And that's where he was at. And so, but it turned into this beautiful film, Bipolar Rock and Roller. And then it turned into, for me, just a complete odyssey into mental health. I had no idea where we were at as a society. And this is prior to the pandemic. Post-pandemic, all those numbers have gone up. We've got the highest suicide rate that's ever happened, I think, since World War I or something. Like, it's just the stressors on society, and then global stressors just from the pandemic. The one thing about this moment, everybody experienced the same thing. You're in Bangladesh, you're still worried about the pandemic and worried about dying because you don't know why. And that's like a human fear that's so basic and so hard to deal with. And the result of that has just been layers and layers of trauma, social trauma, anxiety, social anxieties. It's just amplified everything in society. But the good news, people are starting to talk about it. People are starting to be like, whoa, this is a lot. And this is how I feel. And I can't keep going. And, we need help. And that's been the benefit. There's a breaking point. And I think we're proud to say our film was one of those door kickers, because it became the de facto film that you show at the mental health conference to describe, show, and treat bipolar disorder. They're like, watch it, and it's entertaining. So it really solved, I was able to take my friend and my knowledge, the grief of my brother, my skill as a producer, my friends at Showtime. I was able to take all these pieces of value and relationship that I nurtured and pull them in and go, guys, this is an important mission. And because it was good, everybody said yes. And the impact has just been it's beyond what I thought possible or what I thought was needed too. I didn't know the need was that great.
Yeah, I haven't watched the film yet, but I plan to actually do it.
Yeah, because the emails came to me, the form came to me when somebody did an outreach, and so I would get I'm on the dean's list. I'm in the closet at Syracuse University, and I was going to kill myself tonight. And I watched this movie, and I understand, and so I'm going to get help. And thank you. And I'd just be like, and more, and I'd just be crying. And we're like, oh my God, it's working. But it was so real. Morrow, he let us follow him around in his mania and all of his issues. The hospital. I mean, poor guy. It was so brave what he did, and so important. I mean, people, it's scary. I mean, watch my brother. I mean, I sat and held his hand. I said, Barry, this only ends, in a couple ways, and I don't want to see you die that way. And he's like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I didn't tell him. I've seen a whole bunch of other friends go this way, and that's how I know.
It sounds like he was an incredible musician too, because I did some research.
Yeah, that's why I asked about your stuff, because he could just pick up anything. He'd be like, "What is this? Oh, a paper clip?" And then he'd be playing it. It was fascinating, but it was part of his, his brain. The way his brain worked, it worked differently. He could draw. He drew for Dungeons and Dragons when he was like 9, 10 years old, because his brain was just very, very tuned, differently.
Yeah. Do you think the structure of the Navy helped him with bipolar disorder?
I think it did, because there's a lot of, erratic energies and emotions, and that's what the medication's for. But I think the structure, yeah. And I think also the physical side of it. We grew up athletes. We were wrestling, and, mom put us in every sport because we just wouldn't sit still. And so I think that physicality too. He was a chef, but he was still out there doing the thing. You got to go to training, you got to do all the stuff, and so I think he liked that. He's always trying to wrestle me. After I was one of the greatest fighters in the world, he's like, "Come here, Frank. Yeah, I used to wrestle you when you were little." Like, that was a long time ago, bro. But it was cute. I think and then the spirit was gone. He missed that. That became his family. And then when it was taken away, when he lost it, basically, he really didn't know what to do. And then the streets became his family, and we couldn't get him back.
Yeah, the reason I ask, I'm one of 5 siblings, and my youngest brother, in and out of juvenile detention centers several times, and then when he got out, became an adult, he actually joined the Marines. And for 2 years, his act was fully together. But when he got out, in and out of prison 4 times before I lost touch with him, and doing some really, really bad things. And so I was just thinking, wow, that structure is so valuable, for a lot of people. And my youngest brother, he would always make the worst choice, yet he didn't do it when he was in the Marines, at least on average.
Yeah, it's the doing the good or the bad, man. And it happens every day. Like for me, it's so funny. Everything goes back to being in prison, but In prison, they call it the program. What's your program? Because that tells you what kind of man you are, what's going on. You're like, oh, I get up at boom, I lift weights at boom, I go to church here, and they'll literally tell you your program. It's the 4 events that are happening today, because that's the only thing happening today in prison. But that tells you what someone's doing. When someone says, what's your program? Oh, I'm going to lift iron at 11. I'm going to lift iron at 4. I got college at 1:30. People go, oh, he's a smart weightlifting convict. But every day now, when I get up, what's my program? What am I doing today? And for me, what mind, body, spirit, okay, we got those cared for. Usually by the time I get done with those 3, I have my day filled, or half of it, most of it, because I want to hang out with a friend when I work out. I want to, I want to suck someone else's brain and throw ideas back and forth on things I've been learning. And so, I got to get in there somehow, mentor, mentee. And then the spirit, I gotta share love. I gotta be involved and move, this community higher. And so all my, mind, body, spirit at the end, I'm like, okay, I've meditated, I prayed, I visualized, I got my workout planned. I got lunch planned with someone I want to get in here with. And I also love them. And then I got a walk planned later with someone I love and I just want to share this love with. And maybe I can give them some advice, maybe not. Maybe they give me advice. Maybe I learn something. But that becomes my day. And then, of course, there's a few work items in there and there's a couple other things I got to take care of. But really all that stuff, if you work your program long enough, just becomes the program. It's what you do. So I can get paid to talk on the phone while I walk. Like I can get paid all day if I want to talk on the phone and walk. If I need to talk on the phone and walk, I might set that up. But I don't really need to. I need to do shorter walks. I need to do more hip structure for my back, and I do more stretching. For that, I do speakerphone calls. If I can't, because I do so much of it, I might do a speakerphone call. So I might do a little bit of yes, no, maybe, okay, sure, perfect, do that. Thank you. But I move the project forward and move the ball forward while I'm caring for my body. I used to hike and do my business meeting. So we used to not be a walk and talk. It was a hike and talk. And so I'd book all my meetings to be hiking because I'd work on my hips real bad after my fighting career. My knee was I blew all the tendons out. And so I had to restructure and keep it strong. And so all my, sit around at the pool conversations moved to hiking. It was great. I'll just mute it. Check back in. Mm-hmm. Yep. No. I click out. And then only one time I left it on. They're like, did someone dial in?
Well, the next step, bring everybody on the hike with you for the meeting. Let's go. Right.
Well, that's what I tried to do. I was like, come on team. But, different cycles. I didn't realize, when you retire at 37, everyone else just goes to work in the day. So you're just the only one at home. I was like, oh man, this is not as fun as I thought it was going to be. So I got a different friend group, an older friend group, but then they all got tired and had to take naps. And I was like, okay, we got to figure this out. That's really how I got back into business and entrepreneurship and took the speaking, onto the real stage. Cause I was like, okay, well, this is not going to work. I need to get my friends retired with me. I need to get more people here in my little circle so that we can have more fun and I can, travel less. But that's how I ended up in San Diego. It's just beautiful weather and people want to come here and hang out for just social stuff, fun stuff, beach weather. And so I'm going to do all that stuff in my Warriors Code program right here. That's the big plan.
That's great. A huge takeaway out of this part of the conversation for me is everybody can put a program together that they follow every day to cultivate to be the person they want to be. And I think it would probably, if it was more structured, make a giant difference for just about everybody.
Yeah, it's everybody it's so simple because it's like, wait a minute, that's too simple. And like, no, it really is. And if you just cared for your body, then your mind and your spirit, and then you're kind of rolling out your day with that mindset. It changes the whole thing. And then, then you go to values. Oh, how will I do these things? Well, with martial arts, it's honor, respect, and discipline. That's how you do things. Otherwise, they end up being bad. And then they attract the bad thing. And then your program's not working. You're doing silly stuff and growing the wrong tree, building the wrong wall. And, but it's fascinating because we, as humans, we're so complicated. We know we should eat good. We know we should drink more. Like, we know all these things. And yet we go back to the well and we, we leave the car out for another day. We don't, we just let it get tarnished. And then we're like, oh, why is my car not working? And I have to say the biggest impact for me has been a dear friend of mine who's a preacher, and he's been a preacher for 43 years. And I met him on my journey, and he just touched my heart with love and fatherliness when I really, truly needed it. And I was so touched by him. I was like, will you be my pastor? And he's like, of course. So it's just 10 years ago. And he shows up in Carlsbad one day, and he looks terrible. His face is purple, and he looks near death, like bad flow, bad everything. And I'm looking at him, and it's a man I love. And I go, Bill, I'm worried. Like, what's going on? And he goes, man, I nearly died. He goes, doctor says I got this, cardiovascular and this and that and all these things, and my machine's not working. And he said, I don't know what to do. He said, I've been a preacher my whole life. God saved me. I don't know what to do. And I go, well, whatever you're doing, we got to switch it up, because you're not going to make it. Like, you're just not going to make it. And you finally had money and you had family, and you look at God's giving you all these things. He doesn't want you. You're good. Like, you can stand down. You can care for yourself now. And that's, I'm certain, what needs to be done here. And he's like, oh my God, you're right. And so he's been here ever since. It's been like 2 years. A year. It's been a year. He was here the whole year, and then just went home. We bike every day, but he's just such a good man. And I say this because if you're 50 like me, that investment starts now, yesterday, today, tomorrow morning, because we have not as much time left in the second half. And if you haven't cared for that machine, I didn't care for my machine when I was cage fighting. I've crippled it. So now I have to triple care for it. And I'm only 50. So imagine when I hit 60 and 70 and 80 and 90. Well,
you had to come out with some wear and tear with all
my
of
friends
that.
are crooked and crippled. They're not standing straight. They can't get their spine straight. They can't, reach their arm all the way out. Their legs don't stretch all the way. And I want mine to, because I want to pick up my granddaughter, and I want to, walk her down aisles, and I want to help her with bags. I want to be the old man, here's grandpa. Don't let him fall. To be as strong as I can for as long as I can to have the best. At some point I'm going to keel over and be like, well, as far as we go, team. But until then, I should, part of the thing. To me, it's part of the thing. Plus, how am I going to protect my family if I'm all, old and I can't, a man should, in my opinion, should be strong, able-bodied, able. It's able. It should be able to do your job, able to do what your role is. If your role is pushing strollers at 80, that's your role. You just got to be stable enough to do it, and, ready to walk.
Yeah, I fully believe we can be strong well into our 70s, even 80s, as long as we keep moving. And I've noticed now, I didn't have anywhere near the experience of martial arts that you did, but I was in it for a long time, and I still ache a fair amount. And the less I move, the more I hurt. Yeah, so I have to keep moving, or it gets.
Yeah, that's why as soon as you get a surgery, they get you up as soon as humanly possible. You got to move that machine and get it going and flowing, and if you were a wild animal, you just fall over and die. So we get up and go. That's literally every day. You keep that thing strong. And then I because I have made a disciplined decision. I don't eat sweets. I don't eat candy. I don't drink soda. I love those things. They're wonderful. But they're just a ton of calories that don't do anything. They just make me kind of sweat. I think a little energetic, and then it goes away. And then I'm like, that wasn't a really good decision for my machine. But because I have the discipline to make that decision, and because I stick to it, then I can make other easy decisions or fun decisions. Or if someone brings out a black velvet cake or red velvet cake, I'm going to eat some of it. But I don't feel guilty. I don't ever, Like dessert, yeah, I'll have a bite. That sounds amazing. I don't crave it. It's not a thing. My body's not like wondering. My brain's not wondering where it's at. One act of discipline like that changes your whole thing. You're not susceptible to, well, it was this thing. It's like, no. When you say, I don't eat bread, you don't eat bread. Then it changes the game, and then it'll instantly change your body. When you say, I don't drink soda, you wise. If you drink soda, stop drinking soda, you'll lose 10 pounds. Because it's just sugar, crap, gooing up the machine. You wouldn't pour sugar in a Ferrari. That would be silly. It just makes no sense.
It would. One of the gifts around my autoimmune issues, and when it comes on, it can be rough. I can lose 30 pounds in 2 months, and it can be tough. But one of the gifts is I never eat processed sugar. I just can't. And so it forces me to be 100%, and mental clarity is better than ever. And I feel like my brain gets better every year, even at 62. And I don't think I'm anywhere close to being done with that. So you're right. Now, a simple change like just processed sugar, stop that. It's been 10, 12 years since I've had a soda, and I don't even miss it. People have it around me all the time. It can make a giant difference.
Yeah, it's nuts, the simple things. But we gotta, you gotta take ownership of it. And most of us are, no, I'm gonna work, I got this, and I'm gonna go, but we're not doing, we're not caring for the machines. We're off. We're subcontracting it to doctors and other people and fast foods and like all these different things. When back in the day, you wouldn't. When I was a caveman, I wasn't picking up a dead, nasty, gross thing that was going to make me sick. Because I went, okay, that doesn't make any sense. And we're running around doing this with just gross things that are killing us, literally killing us. And nobody really wants to deal with it. Right? I see it now, my friends, and I'm like, oh man. And of course, I was the guy going, hey team, I think we should be working out.
Yeah. Well, you said earlier, it sounds simple, but I think the genius is in making it really simple. I don't think there's anything new in recorded history in the last 5,000 years, but how it's packaged can be new. And something you said really struck me in one of your interviews around this concept of plus equal minus and how you approach everything with that. If you could share with our listeners what you mean by that, I think it's just brilliant.
For sure. Thanks. Yeah. It's one of my simpler formulas, but it is fantastic. The premise is that if you want to learn something, gain something, gather something, grow something, or achieve something, you search for your plus, like the person who has done it. So for me in fighting, I needed to find the person with the fighting knowledge. I was always in search of that plus. And then your equals is the person who's doing it with you. So that would be my colleague, my people I'm training with. We could then take that knowledge and we work it out, share it together, have different ideas, add to it, subtract, figure out what's best for us. And then there's your minus, and that's the person that you take that newly, developed knowledge with your colleague, that new growth, and you pass it down to somebody who needs it or somebody who's on the journey, or maybe even your coworker or your colleague or your new hire. If you're thinking in the business standpoint. But you can really use it for anything. That's what's so awesome about it. And I gave a talk one time about finding love. And I was like, it went just like this. Hey, sometimes I have trouble in my marriage because this is my third marriage and I quite figured it out. I go, but when I want to use the plus equal minus system, I go, all right, who's been married for a really long time? My neighbor Les. They've been married for 45 years. I walk over to Les's house. I say, Les, here's what's going on, buddy. He just sits down and goes, all right, well, let me tell you. And then I take that same knowledge and I go to my buddy at work and I go, man, let me tell you what I learned. And he goes, I'll think about that. And then I call my son and I go, son, I think I figured something out. Let me tell you what's going on. And so in any, need, it can be used because it's really just a formula for growth and success and connecting people. Because in order to find that plus, you got to be humble and kind and of value and service, support. I mean, what do you offer? Like, why would someone stop to help you? Is it a great story? Is it a good need? Is it going to help me? Like, who knows? Your equal, it's easy to get involved because we're all trying the same thing. We're all struggling. And if you're struggling next to Bob, well, it'll be easy to pull Bob into it, get him involved and get his knowledge. And when I was learning fighting, it was all about gaining knowledge because I was terrified because I was so abused. I had all these bad things happen to me. And then I went to prison. And so for me, I was like triple traumatized and then trying to work that out while learning cage fighting, which, by the way, nobody knew. And so I didn't know that when I signed up for it. I thought it was like all established. So it was finding those equals who shared that same thing. Like, man, I'm trying to figure this out too. Like, all right, well, let's do this journey together. And then for me, the most beneficial thing was finding that minus and saying, hey, man, I just learned this information. Me and Bob worked on it. I got it from Henry up here. And, let me teach it to you. And that process of moving information, creating a circle, it's phenomenal for anything in your business, personal growth, fitness. I did it for bipolar. I found the greatest doctors in the world. I said, hey, man, this is what's going on. They're like, oh, man, that's terrible. I go, yeah, it's crushing our family. We don't understand. And they're like, well, here's all the information. And I just went to the next group. Team, here's what's going on. But it's so powerful because at the end of it, it exchanges that same thing, mind, body, spirit. You get to share something important. You get to share with another human being. You get to grow your mind, and the whole thing feels wonderful. And then if you can do that with some physical activity like surfing or dancing or, martial arts or any of those things, then you get that perfect trifecta, the mind, body, spirit thing. And that's why the martial arts is so good, is it touches that human thing that fills all the needs. Click, click, click. And then you're like, all right, this feels wonderful. And I never got that until near the end of my journey. And I saw the college kids, come when I was doing book signings. I'm like, who are these guys? They were the children of the college kids I had trained. So they were the next generation, but they were, they learned all the lessons. Their fathers had taught them all the knowledge. And so I was like, wow, this is the real value of martial arts, of this system plus equal minus, of, the mind, body, spirit thing. And I was like, that's it.
Yeah. Well, what you've done is put together a wildly powerful mental framework to go after anything that you want to achieve. I love that. And the more simple, the better, because people can relate to it. They can actually do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, that's what I love. It's like, okay, I spent 20 years creating this extremely simple formula. Like, nah, that's too simple. And you're like, oh, darn it.
But it works. The work I do, Frank, with clients, I have another book called Your Most Important Number. And there's one number that every organization has that says above all others, you're winning or losing the game. It shows the value of the company and it drives the majority of the right behaviors. And then every team, even if there's 3 teams, 10 teams, hundreds of teams, they all have their most important number to show the value they're creating. And then they demonstrate the best work they're all doing to improve it. People have told me the same thing. That's so simple. Yes, it's simple. It's complete. Like, show me where it's missing anything. I didn't say it was easy. Like, doing it right is good, hard, and it should be fun work. But simpler is better. It doesn't have to be complex.
Simpler is better. I have the greatest system. I want to share it with you and anybody's listening because you're going to just love this. I haven't thought about it for years, but this was my very first process. I was in prison. I was going to college, and I was like, "Oh man, I got to turn this thing around." Because I saw my buddy Jose, I think his name was, and he was walking the yard, and I go, "Man, that's going to be me if I keep up this journey." And so I sat down in my cell, and I had my court papers, and I had them in a manila envelope because I was always getting moved around different prisons, and because of my age and because of how many felonies I had maximum security. So I carried my court documents with me, and one day I go, I'm ready to change. And I go, oh, there's so much wrong with me. I go, oh, I'm such a bad person. I've done so many bad things. I go, oh, my prison. I'm like, oh man, this is just horrible. So I got a manila, my court folder, and it had my prison number on it, E88463. And then I took everything out and I laid it open and I looked and I went, okay, I'm going to write everything I am on the left-hand side. and I'm going to write everything I want to be on the right-hand side. And then I am going to cross off the list as I change who I am. And and everything I want to become, I'll put all the proof and documents inside of this folder. So I put in my powerlifting championships that I won in Corcoran State Prison. I put in my college things. Like, it just kept growing. And then I just, I was like, oh, wait, I'm not a thief anymore. I'm not going to steal anymore. I'm going to write that. I'm going to get rid of that one. I was like, oh, I'm a bad dad. I was like, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to write. I'm going to, and I just started going down this list and just purging and cleaning out all the things. On the other side of the list, it had world champion, famous actor, these wild, crazy things that I've done. Very successful businessman, all these ridiculous things. Good dad, community leader, these things that I am now. And I would just carry that with me. I'd go to another prison. It'd be a new program. I'd get my program mad, be like, all right, what are we doing today? It's like, we're going to fill the folder. We're going to mark off the list. And I'm going to slowly become the things I want to be on the other side. And then I'll have the proof. So if there's any question with myself or anybody else, I'll just be like, well, I did all the work. And that's what we have our incarcerated youth do. Same exact program, just like I did. They show up with a big old thick folder. Sir, I got this. Sir, I got that. Sir, I go, good. Then you're ready. Let's put you into a community that I'm certain is going to help you, that you're going to be successful in. But that one formula works for anybody. I've done it. I use it as a client tool. I'm like, they're like, I don't know what to do with my life. I'm like, grab a manila folder. We're about to get serious. And the simplicity is in the truth of it. When you're ready to be truthful. And for me, I was at the bottom. It wasn't hard. For a lot of us, it's hard. We're at the top, or we're halfway, and we're like, what do I really want? And do I want to be truthful about it? But I think if you have real things, hard things in your life, you got to be real upfront with the truth. Otherwise, it gets away from you. You don't know what that is. And you end up in realities and roles and doing things you don't, that might not be the best for you. So that's why I always work the system. You got to have proof, and you got to have, you got to have works. Otherwise, it won't be my plus. You got to, my plus is Jesse Itzler. And, I just love him. Henry Holmes is my plus. Like, I have a ton of, Henry Holmes, a super lawyer, now father figure. Jesse Itzler started NetJets and Zico Water, and he was just in Newsweek, I think. They're covering his new endurance, lifestyle, fitness, social vibes, entrepreneurism, which I was there when he launched, because he's just this mad, loving genius. He loves to run, get people together, talk about business while he's out in nature. And so that's what he did. That's his business. I'm like, oh my God, I love it. He's got his kids out there running, his family out there running, but he's like, what do I have? What do I love? What do we need? What's going on? He's like, got to teach my kids fitness, got to help this community. He's like, all right, so that's his business. So all day running company is what it's called. But I've seen it's, it's at the beginning, I've seen its growth. I just love my equals is still Morrow Rinaldo is still my equal, and Brian. I mean, he wouldn't let me say that I'm his equal, but he's my equal in our positioning and our love and stuff for it. He's so far scaled above me. And then my minus is Bobby Summers, who's a combat Marine, artillery Marine, and he's got mad PTSD from the concussions of the shells. And it just came out the big study last month about, oh no, we didn't know they fired 10,000 shells a day. It's like, 10x what normally happens. And these guys' brains are just getting smashed. And so they're coming back and just having massive, brain issues, PTSD. He was hearing voices. People, I was like, oh, Bobby. He's calling me with a gun in his mouth. I'd be like, Bobby, I'm about to walk on the stage. He's like, is everything okay? He's like, no, it's not good. And so we bring we bring the team in. But it works for anything. It's so powerful. And for me, this next year, I'm going back to work per se. I want to travel around and speak like I used to and teach like I used to. I don't teach martial arts anymore. And I haven't for, I don't know, for 14 years or 15 years. So I think I'm going to start teaching. And I think that for me, because I got to keep my body moving even more, it's starting to, I got a whole routine and, it takes about an hour or so. But I think with even more movement would be more helpful.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with me today. If people want to learn about what you're doing, what would you recommend?
Well, you can reach me all the time at frankshamrock.com, and our charity is shamrockway.org. And yeah, and then the newest program we have, which I'm super excited about, is our Battered to Brave program. And that's where we go into communities that have a need, where there's, battered women or trafficked women. We partner with the local martial arts school, partner with the local law enforcement, and we bring all those people together for a social event. It teaches self-defense, fitness, nutrition, all the stuff we talked about. And then we leave a program there funded in the community. So that program continues to run, teaches fitness, teaches martial arts, self-defense. And it's also that glue between the police and anybody who's experiencing those things. And so we're rolling that out strong next year. We did a bunch of test ones. It just happened organically. It just happened on accident. I was like, that sounds great. Let's do that. But now it's a real need. A lot of communities are asking for it. So we're going to try to do 6 next year.
That's incredible. And I've always believed that healthy communities take care of their own, and you don't need much intervention from government or outside sources, and you're building healthy communities. I love how you're creating value in the world. This is so incredible. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love doing it. It's what Bob taught me, and it's I believe it's my purpose, because my purpose is certainly not beating people up anymore. I think that need seems to have passed. So, I think teaching is a purpose of mine, and I've been doing a lot of that through speaking and in this kind of change speaking, I'm calling it. But yeah, I've been so blessed, man. I wake up every day. Most days I wake up and I go, wait a minute, did that really happen? And then I check my body and I go, oh yeah, that's right. But I'm just so blessed that most people don't make it. They come through and they're broken physically, mentally, spiritually. And I feel so blessed to have had the tools and the support and the finances and the brain power at the end of it to go, oh, let's try to, live the rest of the journey the best way possible, and then to gather that knowledge. And that, we all need to spend time gathering knowledge for this machine on that journey so that it can be the best one.
And I believe that we all focus on creating value in the world. It can save just about everybody, because you're giving back. It's that minus piece, and we all feel better when we do it. In our current system, I think people are doing what they think they're supposed to do instead of discovering what they're meant to do by creating value and then building on that over time.
Yeah. And the biggest values here. It's inside. It's you. It's this thing, and that's so. Care for it, love it. Trust me, it's the best thing. And yeah, when it's good, it's good. And when it's not, when you have no health, doesn't matter what you have. No matter how much money, how much love, it's not good.
Yeah, 100%. Well, again, thank you for being here. We'll wrap this up. I wish I had another 3, 4, 5 hours, or maybe a few days to spend with you. You've learned so much, and you create so much value and bring so much value. This has been the Show Your Value podcast, exploring the art of value creation. I'm your host, Lee Benson. If you got value out of today, please like and leave a review for this episode. And until next time, go forth and create value.
I want to live to be 100, literally. I want to live to be 100 years old. And the only way to do that is to, keep this machine tight every day, keep this body, the mind sharp every day, keep the spirit full, and keep this community strong. Other than that, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to wither up and fall over and age and die. Because that's what the human process is. But for me, because I started with the body, I think the body is the most important. Because I started here, and it made me so strong and vibrant and able. I was able to confront my fear. I was able to try something silly. I was able to, open my heart more because I was strong. When I didn't feel strong, that was just not good. So that investment for me is the most important, and for everybody should be the most important. If you want to live a good life, that's the number one investment